you know who I am. I am the great I am.
Come roll with us now. Nothing but the wind for us now. All I see is wind for us now. Can you feel it in the sound? Nothing can hold us truly down. Gotta feel your presence here and now. For the kingdom and the crown. Wanna
22. So, in Limitations chapter 1, what we have encountered is the fall of a nation. And if we're not careful, that nation could be possibly, not saying it could be, but if we're not careful, the things that has happened to this time frame could happen in our time frame. Now, Limitations is a warning, because in that warning, he is telling us that he was looking for someone to comfort him in this, and while they were in distress, but no one comforted him. The enemy has come into the gates. The enemy is coming through our gates. What's happening? The youth, everything that's going on, is saying, you are rebellious. And where did we hear rebellious before? In Ezekiel, where Ezekiel was talking about they are rebellious children. But here, in Limitations, he's talking about because of our rebellion, God has turned. And in chapter 1, as we continue to go forward in 1, going to verse 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, we will learn in Limitations that God is showing you the things that has happened to this group of people, how the enemy has came in and overtook them. And if we're not careful, because of the rebellious spirit that's out there right now, and what's coming, well, we know in a few weeks that the ports are closing down, and the ports are going on strike, in case you didn't know. And then, in case you didn't know, the UN summit is kicking off on November 5th, which they're voting back into NWO, or is it the World Health Organization, WHO? So they're oh no, it's NWO, yeah, New World Order. So they're voting this in coming in November 5th, and then what's supposed to be happening is the UN is supposed to take over power, where the United States, you have to go on the UN website and read their Abbott notes, and there you will find what I'm talking about. But just in that, we ain't talking about the hip hop scene, because there's a lot going on in the hip hop scene. But what's really happening is something that's more important than what's happening to distract us. With Limitations is saying, if we're not careful, and he's just pointing it out. He says, because of the multitude of her transgression, her children has gone into captivity before the enemy. That if we're not careful, a lot of people are going to go into captivity. And as the enemy, and that could be an enemy of the spirit. It doesn't have to be a physical enemy. But the enemy of the spirit is already gathering its forces against us. Now, you say, well, this sounds like doom and gloom, Revelations. Oh my God, the end is here. No, that's not the point. Limitations is like what it says. I'm explaining to you what Ezekiel was seeing in his vision, what God was talking to him in verse 2, where God entered Ezekiel and says, let me show you. And because he says, let me show you, and if we go back to Ezekiel, what I read this morning, when he talked about, we go back to Ezekiel 2, and he says, 2 and 9, it says, now when I look, there was a hand stretched out before me, and behold, a scroll or a book was in it. Then it says, then he spread it before me, and there was written inside, and on the outside written on it were limitations. If we go to Limitations Limitations tells you what's to come. Now, most of you may say, I don't believe that. Most of you say, we've been talking this way for a very long time. People feel in the air right now there is something going on. Something spiritually is going on right now. And people are looking for answers. And people are looking for, how can I find a balance? And just like a certain artist recently came out, the party's over. The party's over. And it's time to become adults. It's time to put on a big boy pants, a big girl pants. Because we have to be spiritually ready, physically ready, physical fitness. Because if you can't even run 5 feet, God, can you imagine trying to run a whole mile? And what if you don't have the ability to drive? And you do have the only ability to walk? Then what? We're out of shape, America. I'm out of shape. I know I'm out of shape. So if I'm out of shape, I'm sure there's a high percentage that are out there just like me. And Limitations is telling you, he said the princes have become like deer that find no pasture. What is the deer doing? It's rut season here coming soon. And what they're looking for? They're looking for a mate. They're looking for pasture, looking for food. Especially in the wintertime, they're going to be looking for food. Just like a deer, wandering, running. And I'm not saying that there is something coming down the pipe militarily. But I am saying that spiritually there is something coming down the pipe. And God is putting it on our mind that we need to do something. And again, I'm reading Limitations. You can read it for yourself. I'm sorry for the smallest print out there. You're like, oh my God, I need a magnifying glass to read that. But in Limitations, as we get deeper from chapter 1 to 2, 3 and 4 and 5, it sounds like what's happening right now. And people like to fall back on Revelations. People like to fall back on Daniel. I got it. But Limitations is like, this happened. A nation did fall. And the enemy did come. And they did destroy. What's happening now? Our economy is falling apart. Our food prices are going up. There's a strike that's getting ready to happen on October 1st, which no one knows how long that strike is going to happen. And no one knows what and how it's going to affect the economy, to include how it's going to affect transportation. Really, no one's talking about it. The information's out there. The truck drivers are talking about it. They're definitely talking about it because they're running in and out the port. But the news is really not talking about it. And no one is really bringing up the fact that, here in a couple of days, there's going to be, if it doesn't happen, that's cool. But if it does happen, a strike. And those ports, I don't know how much of that port is bringing actual just produce, but those ports will affect the other things. And so the Limitations is like, look, this has happened. This has happened. And let's read what happened to them so we don't do it again. But if we're not reading it, guess what? We end up doing it again.
Do you know who I am? I am the great I am.
Come roll with us now. Nothing but the wind for us now. All I see is wind for us now. Can you feel it in the sound? Nothing can hold us truly down. Gotta feel your presence here and now. For the kingdom and the crown. Wanna